Getting started, you could 3D print this yourself, but I bought mine from an Etsy seller called 3D CAULDRON. You can pick various sizes and for what arm you want it to go on. Now let's get into it. As these are 3D printed pieces and they did get mailed to me, I wanted to double check that I got everything that I bought and that they were ready to be prepped. For example, breaking these supports off, etc. Also bringing in some plastic bags to place everything on so I know it'll come off easy as I do the next step, which is adding on my layers of resin. Why are you like this? Add a few thin layers of resin onto each piece to basically just smooth it out from where the printer may have left some lines. Tearing off some pieces of support I may have missed along the way. Oh my god. I placed a drop sheet down and began the process of sanding them down just with a sanding sponge and some sanding paper. This will give the primer something to actually stick to better. Once I had sanded every piece, I wiped them down with a damp cloth to just get off the excess. And then sprayed a shellac primer over top. Being sure to get each piece on all of their sides. This primer does dry fairly fast, so it didn't take very long at all. Come back. Oh my god. As for the paint job, I once again placed a drop sheet down and then set it up. Literally every single color I have. I have everything all ready to go as I didn't do this, as you may have been able to tell, in my craft room, but in a location with a very curious dog. I think I'm going to do an overall of black, which probably seems counterproductive considering I covered it in all white. I really want to do it all in black because it came black, and then I was like, fuck, that's not the primer. Well, we'd be painting over a shiny surface, which is really fucking hard to do. Because shiny surfaces, everything just runs off of them, right? At this point, it's less about me telling you what to do and just telling you what I did, as the paint job is very customizable depending on the character you're recreating, or if you're basically just going off vibes. Oh, calm down with the exhale. I knew I wanted mine to look more like Lucy's from the Fallout show, so I started out with a base coat of black. All of the paints that I'm using are simply just acrylic paints. Now you may be asking, why not just paint it the way it came as it came black? And you probably could, but I wanted to have that smoother finish, and PLA, generally used with 3D printing, isn't known to be super strong
or UV resistant, whereas resin is.
I really wanted to try to put all of them together first, but then I put one piece on, the piece that you were trying to put on, the one that moves, and in order to get it out I had to take a knife to it, and I was like, I can't do that after like the paint job, you know? I'm gonna have to put everything on at the end and just hope all the pieces are here. I double checked online.
I very well could have just used a black shellac primer, but I used what I had.
Ah! No, it's on me! Ah, no! Fuck. Yay, all of it just came off. Yay! Round 2. Go for real this time.
Once I had it all painted black, except obviously the holotape, shh, don't look over there. Using a reference photo this time, and mixing some paints to create my perfect shade. At this point my base layer was dry, so I started on the detailing, coloring where the dials go, and as well as the dials, or I guess the pinpoints as well.
The amount of times I have to do this every time I'm working on a project, I have to like point to the area because I can't find it.
And basically just jumping back and forth between each piece as it needed to dry. You see it as a different timeline though, you lucky dog. The quote-unquote lights, which I originally wanted to actually add lights into this, but I thought it was enough as it was already. For the biggest thing to bring it all together, I used a silver paint on a ripped-up disposable sponge to dab it on to start making it look more metallic. I did a similar process during my pyramid head look with the great knife prop. Again, doing this to every single piece, the smaller pieces back and front. Once I was dried down, I used a disposable sponge but rubbed it down further. And added a brown and red mixture to add some rusty tones. Mostly along the edges, but there were a lot of edges.
Look at that. Ooh. Ooh. Should we stop here? I feel like it's gonna start looking like blood soon. But it's also, it's like, too much of anything, you know?
Once that was all dry, I went in with a pencil crayon, as it's the thinnest form of color that I had on hand, and colored in where the gauges are. I didn't get overly detailed with this, but I did get enough that it gets the idea across, I think. As well as using a yellow to write all the words down. The best thing about using pencil crayons for this is when I messed up a word, I simply erased it and started again. Finally, it was time to do one more sealing layer of resin. And then once that was cured, it was time to add the dials, which meant I needed to drill some holes into the arm piece. As the dials were already a tight fit from the shop that I got this from, they also send screws that they said might need a little bit of help screwing in. I then took each moving piece and their respective screws and I screwed them into the proper holes. This did take some trial and error, as the shop site only supplies photos, which I personally found to be quite confusing, but I was able to message them and get some, let's call it, on-the-job technical support, using a bit to screw them in as tightly as I could without the pieces actually being able to not move freely. This made them actual usable pieces. The actual pinpoint made me nervous, as I thought I was going to lose it, because there's no backside to this. So if it went into the hole, it was lost forever. but I placed it into the bottom gauge, the one that I had colored black, and then placed one of the moving pieces on top and then screwed in both of them. In this particular pack I got from the shop, they did include extra pieces, which is great if you mess up, but it also messed with me because I thought I had done something wrong, like with IKEA, to have pieces left over. And though I thought I would be able to place a pinpoint into the other gauge, but sadly I couldn't. The last steps were putting the entire piece together with the hinges, which was also tough and made me nervous, but I got there. It requires patience, muscles, and blood, sweat, and tears. Okay. There we go. Okay. I even had to hammer a few pieces together into each other and then grab some not in the shop items like a tube, which I cut down to size, and then spray painted, then adding it into the holes that they were meant for with E6000 glue and good intentions. Oh my god. Put the screen holder on there with a few clamps and once again E6000 glue. Then the final portion to it was adding something not in the shop to keep your arm in, and to give you something between the plastic and your arm. I chose foam, a yoga mat specifically. I cut it down to the size that I needed it to be, 2 pieces, one for both sides of the Pip-Boy. Dry placed it and then adding some super glue onto the inside and placed the foam down, clamping it into place until it dried. The other side was a little bit different because I didn't want to fully put and glue it down, as I needed a place to put the back piece and the phone to make this a working Pip-Boy. So I made sure that I glued it down and then kind of just have the bottom half was like floppy. It was a little... Anyways, I don't like the sound of that. And that was it. Except the last bit of adding resin to the holotape. You didn't think I forgot, did you? To make it an actual working Pip-Boy, you can simply take your phone, download the free Pip-Boy app on Android or iPhone, and use it. Just basically put your phone in so that it's kind of resting down on that like screen protector of sorts, and then place the back piece on to hold it in place, and then place your hand in, and the size of your arm will actually keep it in place, for the most part. It doesn't have the full specs of the Pip-Boy that the game or the show does, but you can definitely do a couple of things, which are great for photos or videos. That is it for today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one. Happy Halloween, guys. Bye!